Have you ever wondered what it feels like to die, standing, not falling, not screaming, but frozen in place, your last breath suspended somewhere above the clouds? On Mount Everest, there are over 200 people who never came down. Their bodies remain where they fell, perfectly preserved by ice and time, turning the world's tallest peak into the planet's highest graveyard. One of them was a man whose bright green boots became a beacon for decades. Thousands stepped past his lifeless body on their way to glory, whispering prayers or pretending not to see. His name was Sewang Paljor, but most know him only as Green Boots. Today his story, and the stories of those who followed, reveal 7 deadly truths about Everest that most climbers wish they never learned. Truths about storms that kill in minutes, queues that turn into death traps, and a mountain that's still growing, even as it continues to claim lives. This is not just a story about climbing, it's about obsession, ambition, and the thin line between life and legend. Welcome to Ben Stories, where we explore the world's most haunting real-life tales. If you're ready to step into the death zone, hit subscribe, and let's begin. May 10th, 1996. The wind screamed across the slopes of Everest like something alive, hurling walls of snow sideways, devouring every sound but the thunder of the storm. In that chaos, 8 climbers vanished into white nothingness. Among them was Sewang Paljor, a 28-year-old officer of the Indo-Tibetan Border Police. He wasn't a reckless adventurer. He was disciplined, trained, and hardened by years of mountain duty. But on that night, training meant little. Everest had changed its mood, without warning, without mercy. He had just made history for India, standing at the top of the world. But when he turned to descend, the mountain turned against him. The storm swallowed the ropes, erased the trail, and blinded even the strongest. Inside his oxygen mask, his breath turned shallow. The needle on his tank dropped fast, half then empty. His hands burned with frostbite. He pressed on through the darkness, his flashlight beam flickering like a dying heartbeat. Somewhere near 28,000 feet, he stopped beneath a jagged boulder, no more than a shoulder of rock jutting from the ice. The wind howled outside like a living beast. His body trembled uncontrollably, not from fear, but from the body's final desperate attempt to stay alive. He wasn't alone on the mountain that night. Dozens of climbers were scattered across the death zone, some already gone, others crawling toward salvation that would never come. Radio calls filled the static with fragments of panic. "We can define the ropes, visibility 0. Base camp tried to respond, but the airwaves were chaos. The storm roared louder. Paljor curled into himself beneath the rock, gasping for air that wasn't there. The temperature dropped to minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. His oxygen-starved mind began to drift, past pain, past time, into that strange calm that sometimes precedes the end. And there, in that frozen tomb, his bright green boots caught the last light of his headlamp. They would remain visible for nearly 2 decades, until rescuers finally moved his body to a hidden place. Climbers would later call it Green Boots Cave. For years, every expedition that followed had to crawl past him, their gloved hands brushing the ice beside his legs. Some whispered prayers, others couldn't look. Many said they could still see his face, the ice glistening around his mask like glass. Green Boots became both a warning and a waypoint, a reminder that on Everest, success and death can stand inches apart. But his story was only the beginning, because as the years passed, the mountain kept its appetite. Hundreds more joined him in eternal rest, their bright jackets and tents scattered like confetti across the slopes. There is one place where their colors gather in haunting beauty, a place climbers call Rainbow Valley. It sounds peaceful, doesn't it? A name that might suggest prayer flags fluttering in the sun. But those colors are not flags. They are the faded reds, yellows, and blues of down suits once worn by living people, men and women who dreamed of reaching the top of the world. And among them lies one of the most unforgettable stories Everest has ever known. Her name was Frances Arsentiev, an American woman whose dream was to climb Everest without supplemental oxygen. For months, she trained, studied, and prepared with her husband Sergei. Together they believed love, patience and determination could conquer even the highest peak. They were wrong. In May 1998, Frances reached the summit. For one brief moment, she stood above the clouds, above everything human. But the descent, always more dangerous than the climb, turned their triumph into a nightmare. The thin air clawed at her lungs, the cold stole her strength, and in the chaos, she and Sergei became separated. When another team found her the next day, she was barely alive. Frostbite had claimed her hands and face. Her eyes fluttered open as she whispered, "Don't leave me, please." But they had no choice. In the death zone, even heroes must choose survival over compassion. Frances Arsentiev died alone beneath the stars, her purple jacket glinting in the sun. For nearly 10 years, her body rested where she fell, earning her the haunting name, the Sleeping Beauty, of Everest. The climbers who passed her said she looked peaceful, almost human still, like she might wake at any moment. By now, the slopes of Everest had become a gallery of ghosts. Every frozen face told a story of courage and failure, of ambition that burned too bright. And every climber who came after felt the silent question pressing down on them. How far would you go for glory? The mountain never answers. It only takes. And as strange as it sounds, even now in 2025, Everest is finding new ways to claim lives. By 5 p.m., the summit fever had burned away, leaving only panic in its ashes. The first wave of climbers began their descent, but the wind had turned savage, gusts tearing at their oxygen masks, ripping ropes from anchors, and flinging snow like shards of glass. The path they had so carefully marked on the way up was now invisible. Their footprints vanished under a fresh white sheet of death. Scott Fisher, a seasoned guide, was among them. Known for his strength and confidence, he had pushed his body past its limit. Now he stumbled between breaths, his eyes glassy. His Sherpa Lopsang begged him to move faster, but the mountain had already chosen its next victim. Elsewhere, Rob Hall, another expedition leader, was still near the summit, refusing to leave one of his clients behind. Doug Hansen, a postal worker from Seattle, had dreamed of this climb for years. "We'll make it," Hall told him, voice trembling in the radio static. But the truth was written in the clouds. Night was coming, and the storm was fully awake. At 8,600 meters, the world becomes unreal. Every breath feels like sucking through a straw. Skin freezes, vision blurs, and the line between determination and delusion fades. Some climbers removed their gloves, convinced they were overheating. Others sat down in the snow, just to rest, never to move again. Meanwhile, at Camp 4, the last camp before the summit, base radios crackled with distress calls. Voices overlapped, full of static and fear. "We're stuck near the Hillary Step. We've lost sight of the ropes. I can't feel my legs." Then silence. For hours, teams from multiple expeditions fought to stay alive. Some clipped onto the wrong ropes in the blinding snow. Others followed dead ends that led straight into voids. By midnight, more than a dozen climbers were missing, and somewhere above, Rob Hall was still on the radio, shivering, exhausted, whispering to the world below that he wasn't coming down. "Can you tell my wife that I love her? Please, don't worry too much." Those were his final words, carried through a dying signal into the darkness. The storm raged through the night. Temperatures plunged below 40 degrees. Oxygen tanks froze, masks cracked, and hope thinned like the air itself. The lucky ones crawled into collapsed tents or dug shallow holes for shelter. The rest vanished into the wind. When morning broke, the summit ridge was littered with color, bright jackets, shredded tents, and bodies frozen mid-step. Rescue teams could only recover a few. The rest were left behind, too high, too heavy, too dangerous to move. But even in death, Everest refused to stay still. The snow shifted, winds carved new drifts, and slowly the mountain buried its dead, one by one, leaving only traces, a boot here, a glove there, a silent shape beneath the ice. Yet for those who survived, the mountain's grip didn't end when they descended. Every night, they heard the wind again. Every time they closed their eyes, they saw the faces of those left behind. Everest had taken everything, and yet it still wasn't done. In the days after the storm, Everest was eerily silent. The wind had died, but the mountain looked scarred, as if it had devoured everything that dared to move across its face. Helicopters hovered as high as they could, their rotors struggling against the thin air, capturing glimpses of bright colors dotting the slopes, each a life that had ended in pursuit of the summit. Base camp became a morgue of radios. Messages drifted in, each one a fragment of tragedy. "We found Fisher. He's gone. Hall's still up there. Don't send anyone else." The survivors stumbled down like ghosts, frostbitten, hollow-eyed, their minds trapped somewhere between reality and the void. Some couldn't remember their names. Others couldn't stop crying. One Sherpa muttered over and over, "Too many. Too many." Rob Hall's body was eventually spotted high above the south summit, still tethered to the fixed line, facing toward the top, as if even in death he refused to turn back. Doug Hansen was never found. Fisher lay further down the mountain, half buried in snow, his blonde hair frozen to the ice. And Green Boots? He was already there, his small cave becoming a grim waypoint for every climber who followed in the years to come. Many didn't realize it then, but the storm of '96 had just created one of Everest's most infamous landmarks. From then on, Green Boots would lie there, curled on his side, oxygen mask still strapped to his face, the mountain's cold silence pressing against his body. To pass him meant entering the death zone, not just physically but psychologically, because every climber knew, if you fall here, this is where you stay. For Sherpas, the mountain spirits had been angered. They performed puja ceremonies at base camp, chanting prayers and burning juniper smoke to cleanse the mountain's rage. But no amount of ritual could erase what Everest had become, a graveyard in the sky. In the aftermath, debates erupted. Why did so many die? Was it the storm or human arrogance? Some blamed the commercial expeditions, teams that charged tens of thousands of dollars to lead amateurs up a mountain that didn't forgive mistakes. Others said it was the allure of fame, the irresistible pull to stand on the world's roof, even if it meant dying there. The truth, perhaps, was simpler. Humans forget that nature doesn't care. Everest doesn't celebrate success or mourn failure. It doesn't notice the difference between a world-class mountaineer and a first-time climber. It just waits, patient and indifferent. And even after that deadly season, people kept coming. Each year, more climbers, more bodies, more color against the white. Because somehow, the mountain's cruelty didn't repel us. It attracted us. There's something about the edge of death that makes people feel more alive. By 2010, traffic jams stretched across the Hillary Step, dozens of climbers stuck in a single line, their oxygen dwindling as they waited their turn to touch the summit. Some made it, others never returned. And through it all, Green Boots remained in his cave silently watching as though reminding everyone, this is how ambition ends. Every storm that came after carried echoes of 1996. The names changed, but the story stayed the same. Pride, exhaustion, thin air, and the unrelenting mountain. Everest never forgets, it only collects. And with every climber that dares to rise above the clouds, it waits for another name to carve into the ice. By the 2020s, Everest had transformed from a mythical conquest into a global obsession. Hundreds lined up each season, stepping over frozen ropes and older bodies, hoping to capture a single photo above the clouds. For many, it wasn't about the climb anymore. It was about the proof, a picture, a post, a headline. The mountain that once terrified explorers had become a backdrop for glory. And yet, the danger was still there, hidden behind every gust of wind, every silent crevasse. One of those climbers was Haruto Nakamura, a 42-year-old engineer from Japan. He had trained for 5 years, spending every vacation scaling smaller peaks, Kilimanjaro, Denali, Aconcagua, each one a rehearsal for the ultimate goal. His wife begged him not to go. "Everest doesn't need you," she said. But he only smiled. "Maybe I need it." Haruto's team was well prepared, guided by experienced Sherpas, carrying the latest oxygen systems and satellite trackers. But even the best technology couldn't change the mountain's mood. When they reached the death zone, a wall of jet stream wind slammed into them, sudden, invisible, merciless. The line of climbers ahead halted. Visibility dropped to 0. Radio chatter turned frantic. "We've lost the fixed rope. Do not move. Wait for signal." But waiting was deadly. The cold crept in fast, numbing fingers, freezing oxygen regulators. Haruto turned to check on his Sherpa and saw nothing but white. He shouted. The wind swallowed his voice whole. That's when he saw it, a shape in the snow ahead. A man, crouched, wearing green boots. Haruto knew the story. Everyone did. But seeing him, the legend, the ghost, felt unreal. He reached out a trembling hand, brushed away the snow from the mask, and whispered, "You're real." Then he realized what it meant. He was near the point of no return. He fumbled with his radio. Static. Dead. The cold was chewing at his mind. Logic slipped away. He kept climbing, past the green boots, past reason, driven only by a whisper inside. "You came this far. You can't stop now." Hours later, rescuers found him sitting just above the cave, his face covered in ice, eyes open, expression calm. Like he'd simply fallen asleep next to the man he once read about. He became another landmark, another color on the mountain. After Haruto's death, the debate reignited across the world. Why do we keep going up there? What makes people trade their lives for a moment on the roof of the world? Some say it's ego, others call it destiny. But maybe it's simpler. Everest reflects what's inside us, the hunger to matter, to stand somewhere few others can, to prove, even for a moment, that we exist. And yet, for every person who makes it, there are others frozen forever on the slope, their dreams sealed in ice. No flags mark their spots. No headlines remember their names. Only the wind whispers their stories. In 2025, satellite images revealed something chilling. More than 300 bodies still remain on Everest, many exposed, others slowly reappearing as glaciers melt under rising temperatures. The mountain is giving them back, one by one, faces long hidden under ice, eyes staring at the sky as if still waiting for sunrise. For those who climb today, these figures are both warning and witness. Every step upward passes over bones, over ambition, over the past. And every climber knows, one mistake, one breath too short, and they too could become part of Everest's frozen gallery. Because here, the price of glory is not fame, it's permanence. They say Everest never kills out of anger. It kills out of indifference. It doesn't choose. It simply watches, waiting for the moment when ambition outruns wisdom. When rescuers pass Green Boots today, they often pause, not to mourn but to remember. His cave has become a grim compass, a line between life and legend. Some leave a token, a glove, a scarf, a whispered prayer, before pressing onward into the thin air where gods and ghosts meet. And maybe that's what makes Everest so haunting. It's not the height, it's the silence. The silence that reminds us how fragile we really are. Every year, new climbers take that same path, past the same frozen faces, the same warnings, and still they climb. Because to them, Everest isn't just a mountain, it's a mirror. It reflects everything we fear and everything we chase. When you look at it long enough, you begin to see yourself. The story of Green Boots, of Rob Hall, Doug Hansen, Scott Fisher, Haruto, none of them wanted to die. They wanted to live more than anyone else. They wanted to feel something purer than comfort, deeper than safety, and in chasing that feeling, they found eternity. As you watch this, somewhere up there, a climber is taking his first step into the death zone. His radio hums. His breath fogs. He believes he'll come back down. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't. Because Everest doesn't take everyone, but it keeps enough to remind us who's in charge. So next time you see those pictures, the endless snow, the lonely summit, the quiet trail of color against white, remember, behind every flag, there's a story. Behind every story, there's a price. And up there, the mountain always collects. This was Ben's Stories, where true tales meet the edge of the impossible. If this story moved you, hit subscribe and stay with us. because the next climb was even darker.